Welcome back to Grace to Endure. In these next two videos, we're going to take a close look at what Jesus did right before he died. We're going to look at how he prepared those who were his closest companions for his death. He was also preparing them for the short-term separation and long-term separation. And so we can, I think, learn from this when we think we are coming uh, upon a time when we might experience loss. And it might be different kinds of loss. It could be death, it could be a diagnosis that's going to surely end in death. It could also be the tribulation, if that does happen in our lifetime, and the imprisonment that will come with that. It could also just be friends or family moving away and experiencing just long term separation. And so I hope that these ideas, as we look at what Jesus did, will help us as we are preparing to experience loss. Let's look at some of the things that Jesus did right before he died. Some of these things are actually really all about them instead of himself. And it was really to encourage them after he died. So, what he did is he ate with them. That's a good idea of something to fill your time with when you're about to experience loss, is to just sit down and have a good meal together. It says that there was preparation time going into this, he looked forward to it, and that tells me he was probably very attentive and he didn't have his mind focused on the pain that was coming. Now, that's gonna come, it's gonna be at point 5. However, not here at this meal. He didn't let that kind of seep in on this last meal together. Instead, he was very attentive at this meal to them and their needs. And one of the ways that he met their future needs was point number 2. He talked to them about what they were going to do in heaven together once they were together again, in the kingdom specifically. And so that is super encouraging, right? So he wasn't just thinking about himself. No, in this mealtime, he was actually thinking about them and how he could encourage them. And he knew this would bring great comfort during their time of separation. And so it is with you and with me. When we're going to go through a separation, a good idea is to talk about the things that we're going to do when we get back together again. Number 3, he gave them something to remember him by. Of course, that was the Lord's Supper, and it's of course true that he had many different things he was doing here by setting up the Lord's Supper, but he did give him something to remember him by, and so it's a good idea for us to do something similar, maybe a memory, an activity. You could write a letter or a note. I've even known some people to make like a little journal and just fill out different things in that journal that they want to pass on to their closest companions before they die. Okay, number 4, notice that they sing together. There is something very healing to singing together. And so, singing a hymn is specifically what they did. So, find favorite hymns and sing them together. This is a great way to send somebody off. Number 5, he talked to his closest companion. 3 is what he picked. He had 3 closest companions out of the 12 that he picked to talk to about his grief. Now, he didn't, if you notice, talk about his grief with the 12, only these 3. So I think it's important and a wise example to follow that if you're really struggling with a certain aspect of your death or someone else's death, to pick wise friends and talk to them about it. You don't want to just go saying this to just anybody right before you die or they die. You certainly don't want to make them stumble in their faith or anything like that. So work that out with the mature Christians that you know. So just before the Passover, which is right before the cross, Jesus washed his disciples' feet. And I want to draw a few things from this passage here in John 13. Number 1, we want to look at how in verse 1 it says that Jesus loved them all the way to the end. And so all the attributes that we see in 1 Corinthians 13 were present with Jesus all the way to the end. So it's important that we do the same, even if we are about to experience loss, and not let agitation, irritation, frustration, situations and circumstances turn us into a very unloving person. So we don't want to do that. And then let's look at the next point, and that is that Jesus did this as an example, this washing of the disciples' feet. Let's look in verse 7. Jesus answered him, What I am doing, you do not realize now, but afterward you will understand. So I think it's important, if we are about to be separated from people, to think about what are some things that we could do to set an example that they may or may not understand the gravity of at the time, but that later on would be good for them. One example could be starting to pray together, Bible study, one on one time together. Just think of some creative ways that you can do things that could help this person long term once you're separated. Then let's look at verse 15. I am giving you an example that you also should do as I have done for you. So I think that before we're going to experience separation, think of things that you could do that would be good examples for these people that you love to follow after you are separated. And then lastly, of course, this entire passage is about serving them. Jesus, who is God, the King of Kings, came and he served us, right? If he can serve us and he's way greater than us, we can definitely serve. So think of ways that you can serve those that you love, those that are in your life, and do those acts of service now while you still have time.